Jono Bacon.
I know. It's good to see you.
Totally ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. For those of
It
you
is.
who don't know who Mr. Jono Bacon is, he is the founder and CEO of the Community Leadership Corps. We actually had the pleasure. Yeah, we had lots of fun working together at
We did.
Ubuntu or Canonical, the company behind Ubuntu. And it's been, I hate to say, over a decade
It's been about
since we
200
worked
years.
together. It's been about
It's
200
been a
years.
long time.
Anyway, for those who don't know you, since you left Ubuntu, you've been working as the community manager of XPRIZE and also the community manager of GitHub. And you set up your own company and consultancy, helping, I don't know, tens, hundreds, scores, millions of startups and enterprises sort of like set up and set their communities in order. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation about what the heck is a community, especially in tech.
Yeah.
I
Good
mean,
question.
everybody's like waffles on about we have this community and it's a WhatsApp community, it's a Slack community, it's an events community. Jono, what the is a tech community?
Yeah, the way I look at it is, I think if you look at human beings, there's like a psychological layer in how we operate, and then there's kind of the tangible way, the logical way in which we look at the world, right? So when we think of our work and we think of what we do, we make all of these logical decisions about where we spend time. But what drives a whole bunch of that is our psychology, and that's going to be what motivates us, what inspires us, what gives us pleasure, what reduces anxiety. And a community is when we come together as a group to fill in both of those layers, right? So yeah, you can go to LinkedIn and you can learn about a particular topic, but when you spend time with a group of people who are like-minded, you don't just learn and grow, but you build friendships, you build relationships, you feel a sense of belonging. And that layer can be very, very powerful in building brands and building engagement around a business. So my goal has been to figure out like the science and the art of like how to do both of those layers really well and how to connect them together.
So if I'm a founder of a startup, okay, I mean, obviously I love my baby product. I'm a cybersecurity startup, I'm a DevOps product, fintech, whatever. Obviously I love my product, but why would my target audience for 1 minute love my product so much that they'd want to be, or they'd want to form a community around my product? I mean, that's lovely, but why? I mean, it sounds
why would they do it?
Yeah, why would they do it? And what does it mean to be a member of that community?
Yeah, well, I think let's start with the end bit, because I think the perception when we think of a community online is typically a Discord channel or a Slack channel or a forum or something along those lines. And a lot of people who approach community building look at it from purely that angle. And honestly, I think 20% of people care about that stuff. Most people are never going to go into your Discord or your Slack or your forum. To me, what is powerful, though, is what is the role of other people in my learning and adoption of your product? And that is very common, right? Like if you look at how many companies organize conferences and go to meetups and do online events and webinars and stuff like that, people are very compelled by spending time with other people. The problem in my mind is that most of the way in which people do that, it kind of sucks. Just look at webinars as an example. We all know what webinars look like, right?
No,
Usually 45 minutes of waffling and then 15 minutes of discussion.
Yep.
And arguably the most interesting bit is that 15 minutes when you actually get to interact and engage with the host as well as potentially with other people. Right. So my view and my approach here is, if we just look at that webinar, don't think about Discord or forums or whatever else. How do we maximize the value of that? And I'll give you an example. When we do it with people, in the first minute, the first thing you say is, everybody turn your cameras on, if you're doing it on a platform like Zoom. Because when we see each other's body language, then we start to develop a sense of trust. And building trust is a foundation of how you want to build a great business. But the second thing is, in the first 2 minutes, get people to go to a shared document or whatever and type in like what they want to get out of the session. When we do it, we have them go and type in what they want to get out of the session, and then we have people upvote it. So now you know, okay, I've got 100 people on my webinar. Now I know what this group of people cares about. And then you deliberately facilitate people sharing and unmuting and engaging with each other. And what's interesting about it is, time and time again, we do this every week with our customers. people leave those sessions and they say, that was just, I learned a lot, but also it's just really fun. It was engaging. It was different. It was different to what I'm used to. It wasn't one of those terrible webinars. When I think of community building, it's doing lots of those things. It's not just getting people into a Discord channel. And I think every business can benefit from this. And it's honestly not a huge amount of work. It just requires a very distinctive way of looking at how to facilitate groups.
But if you look back at, and maybe I'm thinking of a community, maybe in its most extreme form, but when we were part of Ubuntu Canonical, we were part of the open source community. And I remember sort of like my onboarding sessions and, when they were saying to me that there are tens of thousands of people contributing to writing code and to doing QA, to the design. And I was like, why? And like, do people still do that? Or is it sort of like, have people sort of like taken a step back and now communities are a lot smaller, but a lot more in bite-sized chunks? Or does it depend per company? I mean, like what you described as sort of like on the Discord channels, on the Slack channels and the webinars seems like a very small and narrow form of community. Whereas what I described as what was happening in the open source community as being like they were living for that channel. They were going to the Ubuntu events for that, for those experiences and being part of that community.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's interesting is that I'd say that arguably the area where the art and the science of how to build communities online has been most tested is in open source, because the foundations of open source are people coming together to build code.
Right.
But what I think is interesting is it is the most unusual, by far the most unusual way of working. Like most companies will never will never need to or can do it that way. So I think our experience working at Canonical building Ubuntu was very unusual. It was unusual inside of the open source world, let alone just be in the broader business world. So, and part of the reason for that is, if we looked at Ubuntu, for example, part of what attracted so many people to Ubuntu was, to me, there's a difference between building a community and building a movement, right? A community, you bring a bunch of people together, you've got a shared interest. A movement is when you feel part of something that's fundamentally rewiring how we do something.
Right.
So when we were building Ubuntu, it was, this is a better way to do technology, right? And people, I mean, as you will remember, Billy, people would tattoo themselves with our logo.
On their ass.
It was crazy. So that level of like passion was because it now became their identity was baked into it to a certain degree. And you see a lot of that in open source. I mean, a good example is the CNCF in the cloud native world. Like a lot of people who go to KubeCon, just fundamentally, that's part of who they are. Now, for most people who are listening or watching this, for their companies, it won't be that, right? It's going to be, you just want to reach out, you want to meet your audience, you want to meet your prospects, you want to build a great customer base. So that's why we can't, I think, take some of those components and apply it into the broader modern context. But in some cases, when there is a massive seed change, then you can absolutely build a movement like that. But they're pretty rare when they occur.
So, I mean, would it be fair to say that every company can form or should form a community, or that you have to meet certain criteria before you should consider forming a community?
I think there's definitely some fundamental requirements. One is you've got to have a product that's actually good, right? There's been people who've tried to build a community.
Every product is good, though. Everybody thinks that their product is good. Every founder thinks that they have just released God's given gift, and that everybody's lining up now to use it. So a product that's good. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's got to be good. It's got to work. It's got to add some value. It's got to do so. It's got to solve a problem that somebody's actually got other than the company. So that definitely is a fundamental. Because
so basically, you're saying the product has first of all got to have some traction.
Well, not necessarily even a lot of broad traction, but I think there's got to be a case where you've built something that serves a clearly defined market need, where there is an addressable market out there, and some people have used it and gotten value out of it. Now, it may be 10 or 20 people have used it. It might be a super early group that's used it. You've got to have something that's actually good. For example, we're working with a company called Zed. They've built
ZED?
ZED. It's basically it's a programming editor. It's taking on kind of VS Code and, people use it to build software. They've had a huge uptick in interest in it, like pretty much from the very beginning, because they've built something that's just really high quality and really durable and really resonates with their target audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that kind of situation, you're in an ideal place.
Okay.
But if you don't have a product or it doesn't work very well, you're going to struggle. The other thing is that the leadership of the company has to see the implicit value in building a community. They've got to see the purpose and the reason for it. But
Okay.
also it's got to be held accountable. And this is one of the biggest problems is what we see all the time is company hires a community manager, a developer relations person. They come in, they work for a year. They do what
Yep.
DevRel and community people do. They write blog posts, they do social media, they go to conferences. And then the founder a year in says, what have we gotten out of this? And the reason
This is
why
a lot
they
of
get to
money.
that
It
point,
says it's gotten a lot of time. What have we?
yeah, like what have we
Mm-hmm.
actually got out of this? So there's a misalignment. And
Yeah.
the way in which we approach this, we think of like, imagine like three columns, column 1, 2, and 3. The third column is outcomes. Like what does the business want to get to when you evaluate the success of the business? It's usually one of three things. It's adoption, like more people using your stuff, sales, or it's brand growth. And it's usually more than one of those three things. So
Okay.
one of the things we always say to companies is, let's start out with like, what is the outcome you want to get to? So let's say it's going to be sales, and we're going to focus on lead gen. The middle column is assets. These are the things you've built out that you own, that you focus your time, energy, and people on. That's going to be things like your blog, your YouTube channel, podcast, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first column is sources. This is where traffic exists. This is conferences, paid ads, whatever. You need to make sure that when your DevRel or your community manager is operating in the sources and assets columns, which is where they'll spend most of their time, that it's clearly interconnected into the outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, they're only spending time on the assets that are having the biggest level of impact, for example. So it's amazing how many companies, when they do that at the beginning, they get way better results, but it requires the founders, being clear on what those outcomes are. It's amazing how many founders aren't clear on what those outcomes are. And B, that the connective tissue between the execution and those outcomes is there. Because a
Yeah.
lot of community managers and DevRel people, I don't want to be rude to those people. It's not their wheelhouse to figure out business logic and how that kind of
Yeah.
connects together.
Yeah.
So that's really fundamental. And then you just got to have the time to do it, right? And a certain amount of like creative freedom. There are some marketing folks we've worked with in the past where they operate within a very specific set of like operational guidelines that are very well placed and work well for in a marketing context. But when you're building a community, you've kind of got to live in the edges a little bit. So there's
Mm-hmm.
got to be a little bit of, you got to be willing to fail and try things and them not work out perfectly, because it takes a long time to build a community. So those are, I'd say, the fundamental ingredients needed in the business.
Now I'm wondering, AI. How has AI sort of like impacted community building and engagement, if at all? I'm assuming it has, but
Yeah,
wondering, yeah, what's going on there?
I think right now, uh, most people are using AI as a time saver, right? They're using it to help
Mm-hmm.
with, ideation, creating content,
Writing
social media,
content,
stuff
yeah.
like that. It's similar to
Mm-hmm.
what a lot of people are doing just in marketing and
Automation,
sales and elsewhere.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, and this is what we're starting to play with, but the real opportunity here is fundamentally when you break down the community experience. So just, I think, any human experience, I think of it as like a pyramid, right? And if at the bottom of the pyramid, you've got like very general purpose stuff, right? Training courses, blog posts, YouTube videos. And then at the top of the pyramid, you've got very finely tuned one-on-one help with exactly what you're trying to solve, right? People really value the stuff at the top of the pyramid. So the best human experience in an online setting is to create content and experiences and engagement that is as close as possible to the top of the pyramid. But typically, like when you have a small community, you've got 10 people in it and you know
Yeah.
everybody, then it's really easy to do that because you can get a sense of who everybody is. When we were at Canonical, we had 60 million users. Our community of contributors was 350,000 people who were
Wow.
actively creating content and
Yeah.
documentation, whatever else. We couldn't possibly know all those people, but now we can with AI. We can use AI to be constantly crunching the data and understanding the audience.
You can also use it as sort of like, hold on a minute. So like, when is the next release, or what will the next release include? Hey, that question was only asked so like 2 days ago. Um, let's just pull back that answer, as opposed to having the community leader having
Exactly.
to.
As a founder, you always want to make sure that you're only ever doing the things that only you should be doing, right? Everything else should be delegated. And I think of that with every role in a business. So to me, if we look at a community manager, a DevRel person, they should be building and fostering relationships and helping people to be successful. That's the whole point of their job. So using AI as their, dog is my co-pilot to kind of go in there and to surface information and to pull together resources and augment that is great. But the community manager or the DevRel person should only ever be engaging in the high value relationships.
Who are those companies that you think are doing a really good job out of making the most out of their community, and so like really benefiting from their investment in community building?
A few that spring to mind, and some of these will be companies we work with, some of them won't be. Yep. For example, I think the Linux Foundation does a really good job in building this global kind of movement around how people build open source and share and collaborate together. The CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, is closely related to that as well. I think Red Hat for many years has done a great job, again, in technology. And they've done especially well in building a business as well as building a community.
Right.
I think I'm proud of the work we did at Canonical, but it was harder to build a business around it because the community was so open. Lego, with Lego Ideas. Lego, amazing. Again, put a YouTube video out about this.
Is that just because it's your fetish, Jono, or are they really?
No, my fetish is way creepier than Lego. That was a joke.
Let's leave
people.
It there. Okay?
Lego, they created a community called Lego Ideas where people could create concepts for Lego sets and submit them, and then they would be upvoted. Another example would be, weirdly, Harley-Davidson. They've created like hundreds and hundreds of like local biker groups all over the world.
That's very physical presence as well. That's very much, we get together on a weekend and we ride our bikes together and make a lot of noise and annoy the neighbors.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Like, I want to kill them. So that's very physical. So I can definitely understand that.
Another example would be Alama, which is kind of a company and a open source project that's wrapped around kind of building out AI technology. They've got like a big library of models that they work in. Likewise, I think IBM, even though IBM are a much bigger company,
IBM really interesting.
They've been focusing on this AI technology called Granite, and it's really early days for them. But there's some really interesting traction happening there. And then what is interesting is if people are watching this really want to kind of go and take a peek into this, going to a place like the Linux Foundation or going to a place like the CNCF and looking at some of the more popular projects in there can really kind of showcase like some of the things that are happening in the state of the art. Like, for example, there's a project called Dapper, which is created by a company called Diagrid within the CNCF that's been really starting to take off as well. They just graduated inside of the CNCF. So those are the places that I'd probably check first. Billy, one thing that we haven't really talked about, which I think is worth getting into, is the balance between marketing and community and even sales as well. Because this is something, again, we're seeing with a lot of the companies we work with.
The Holy Trinity.
The Holy Trinity. All of the stuff that marketers do a really great job in, right? In building a brand and building funnels and optimizing landing pages and doing email automation, all that kind of stuff was largely completely separate to what I see people in the community world doing, right? I was amazed that these two worlds were like almost completely separate. And one of the goals that I've got in my work, and I think we need to be moving towards, is they need to be bridged more, because I think every marketer can benefit from that relationship-centric way of doing things. And every community person can benefit from how to build these online campaigns and do them really well. And then, so I think there's a lot of meat on that bone, but also then you've got sales, which is off to the side. And a lot of community people don't like the idea of sales because I think sales is kind of this skeezy used car salesman kind of thing.
I want to hit my quota.
Right. And then when I think about the best salespeople that I've ever met, it's so natural, and it's, again, focused on relationships and it's focused on problem solving. So to me, the mindset of a great salesperson, a great community person, a great marketer is the same. It's like, I'm motivated by working with people. I'm motivated by helping people solve problems. And I use technology to do that. And I want to see those three things overlap more and more. So the one thing I would say is, if anyone's watching this and you're starting a new company, or you've just started a company, and maybe you're working with Billy, right? Is blend these 3 different roles together as much as you can. Like we're doing it in my company, and it's having a massive impact because it's much more effective when you don't silo these 3 things in different areas, and they connect together better.
No, totally. I totally see that. And I think that marketing can leverage off community and vice versa. Marketing already leverage off sales and vice versa. So the whole, like, they can't work in silos. It's just sort of like wasted efforts. And Jono, as you know, I could carry on talking to you for another 2 decades, but we would really bore our listeners
We would
to
really
death.
bore everybody.
We would
We
really,
would.
but we'd have fun. So who cares? So let's
It'd be
carry
great.
on.
Yeah, we'll do that another time. So
okay. Jono Bacon, you're the
it was a pleasure.
goat. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure,
Love you
Billy.
dearly.
Thanks for having me on.
Awesome to